Hi, everyone, and welcome to Talking DTC, how Pharma is reacting to the new DTC reality. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to dig into how brands are responding to this moment. Some hitting pause, some staying cautious, and others moving fast and finding opportunity. Just a couple quick reminders before we begin. We will be doing a Q&A session, so please ask your questions in the event chat. Also, the DTC National Conference will take place in this April in Boston, so we hope to see you there. Also, be on the lookout next month for our next Talking DTC webinar and the newest issue of the Aimfire Insights e-magazine, which will highlight the upcoming DTC National, include interviews with key stakeholders, and dive deeper into this uncertain and fast-changing landscape. Thank you again for being here, and let's get started.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Ehrlich. I'm the CEO of DTC Perspectives. Welcome to another episode of Talking DTC. We have our usual guest today, our co-host, Frank Chipman from AIM. Frank is our creative guru, a market research expert. And from Eversana, we have John Kenny, Executive Vice President. So I want to let them introduce themselves a little bit more, and then Frank will take over and introduce John.
Yeah, so I'm Frank Chipman. I'm Managing Director for Advanced Insights and Marketing. We're a market research company. I'm the editor for DTC Insights magazine, which I write and we present every month. So this month we are presenting information about the new environment for DTC following the September Pearl Harbor event. John.
Thanks, Frank. Hey, everyone. My name is John Kenny, Chief Strategy Officer at Eversana Intouch, recent recipient of Agency of the Year. Work across nearly all pharma categories and most of the big pharma companies. So excited to talk through high level how our clients are navigating this highly uncertain regulatory environment.
Great. Thanks, John. So yeah, this is an uncertain environment. So the magazine that we just published is about what the uncertainty means and what it will mean going forward. We did interviews with seven companies as part of the magazine. It may not surprise anybody on this meeting to know that nobody would go on record. So all 7 companies would only speak on the basis of anonymity. And I can't even refer to the size or type of brands that they represent. So we all know, beginning of September, 40 letters were issued by FDA related to efficacy issues and side effect issues. I don't think that was any surprise to anybody. And even reading the letters, a lot of people might even agree with a lot of the letters to say, some of these companies were over the line in terms of the standards of the FDA. But I think we all know what is happening here. The FDA is not going to put up with it anymore. The days of putting marketing into the FDA and expecting that most of it will go through is over. So what we're having now, just and understand what it means to put our submissions into the FDA and continue to develop marketing that will be effective and will also serve the patient population in a way that puts them first. So let me talk about the comments that I got from the clients, and that might give us a perspective on what it means going forward. Of the comments that I got from clients, 2 of them were kind of shocking because these are 2 fairly substantial DTC marketers. They're pulling back. They're going on pause and they won't be doing marketing, at least in the short term. 2 of the clients I spoke with indicated that they have marketing programs in progress and they're not going to change that program, but they will be doing a more conservative approach and putting a lot of their information through their regulatory, their MLR, and making sure that the submissions will be strong. One of the clients is issuing or launching a new brand in a highly competitive category next year, and they don't expect to use TV because they believe that they would not be able to do a TV campaign under the new regulations. And one of the companies is actually seeing this as a big opportunity for them. It's where some of the people who are listening might say, why is that? They're finding new ways of doing marketing and thinking about new ways of adjusting their marketing program that can take advantage of this new environment. So then we got to take a step back and say, what will that mean for everybody? How can we understand what to do next? Because I think I've also heard in talking to clients, there's that level of uncertainty that they say, well, how do I get ready for this? What am I going to do next? So our agency, just to call us out, we've developed a workshop that we've already done with one client, which was putting it together and saying, what is the return of DTC marketing? Where is a high ROI? Why should you continue to do this? Why is it kind of dumb to go off air? What is a creative agency working with you, and what should they be doing to make your program stronger? And finally, looking at it from an FDA regulation standpoint. We've talked to and we work with FDA regulators who are no longer there. They've got to be out of the FDA in order to speak candidly. So we've talked with that set of people, and we're able to work with that set of people to provide that kind of guidance. So again, this is with DTC Perspectives. If you want to, you're welcome to reach out to Bob or somebody there and talk with them. But putting that aside, you guys are going to have your own ability to work on your development of your programs. And there's a natural, and this is probably what you do already, but you're just going to have to streamline it and make it stronger. One of the regulators that we spoke to, who was a former head of the FDA when it was DDMAP, said to me, she's like, look, this is not rocket science here. You align your label with your strategy. You put your strategy in association with your agency. The agency, and this is one of the agency people that I spoke with, said, we can't dumb down our marketing program, so we're not going to make it boring. We simply have to put that together with the strategy. Then we need to make sure that our fair balance is not going off the rails. We got to give up this idea that we're going to obscure fair balance. That's part of the problem from the past. And then we got to do a submission that works with MLR and does it effectively. So again, back to the DDMAC head, it's not rocket science. We all know how this works. It's just we're going to have to do it better going forward because FDA is not going to let us do this anymore the way we have in the past. So this turns me over to John Kenny, who is probably the best guy to speak on this. And in my interviews, that's why I picked him to be on the webinar. John said something that really rang in my ears, and he said, he's with Eversana Intouch, and he said, now is not the time to wave the white flag. Don't give up. Actually go even stronger, because the companies that come at this strong are going to be the companies that win. Why did you say that, John?
So, Frank, and I want to be very empathetic to a lot of the pharma marketers out there because we're dealing with an environment of regulatory risk that none of us have seen in the over 10, 15 years. So I want to be very sympathetic to that. But I also know that you have to balance regulatory risk with the marketing certainty that if you reduce your share of voice, there's not many iron laws in marketing, but the one is that if you reduce your share of voice, your share of market will go down. If your competitors continue advertising, do brand marketing, regardless of the format, regardless of their digital video, regardless of the fact that it's linear TV, but if you reduce your marketing spend or eliminate it, you will see your brand volume suffer. And so for us, especially marketers who are committed to making an impact on their business, giving up is not really a credible option. And so what we've been looking at is what are the other models of advertising that we can learn from that can get us away from, I think, the straitjacket that pharma marketing has been in for the last era, where it's about maximizing quality of life vignettes to make your drug look like the miracle drug that can solve all problems. And I think the good news is that we're finding a couple of really interesting models that I think all marketers can use when thinking about how to do brand marketing in a high regulatory environment. And I think I'll start off with the first and probably the most important is the big focus of the letters has been really staying close to your clinical data. And I think a lot of marketers have said, well, I really should be about emotional messaging rather than functional messaging. And so we've seen a lot of pharma marketers over the years avoid using strong data claims, clinical data claims in their marketing. But we're learning the wrong lessons. We're taking lessons from consumer packaged goods that rarely talk about data because there's nothing very innovative. It's not a category that people care about. But we see lots of categories out there that use data in a really powerful way. Let's start off with the granddaddy of them all, the Apple's iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was an RTB. That was a data point that anyone who used to schlep around 12 cassettes in their back pocket knew, wow, this is a big deal. It was a data point that generated an emotional reaction. That's a big deal. I saw an advertisement from Clinique the other day, which reduced skin blemishes by 56%. What's shocking is you often see more data and scientific MOA videos in beauty ads than you do in pharma. Or Michelob Ultra, which recently took over Bud Light, Modelo, Miller Lite as the number one beer brand in America. Why? Because it really relentlessly hit home. They had 2.4 grams of carbs, not mentioning that Miller only has 3.2. But data can be incredibly powerful. And we operate in conditions where our patients care, are highly invested. And if you can say, for example, like Skyrizi, 90% skin clearance, for someone who suffers from psoriasis, that's an emotional appeal. When we talked, Vyepti, they talk about for people who have to manage migraine every day, every week, the fact that Vyepti was a 4 times a year infusion, that was an emotional message. And so I think we reject the idea that staying close to clinical data means you can't be emotional. It's about understanding that if you've got a real breakthrough product and people understand their condition and understand what that can do for them, that will generate a memorable emotional reaction. So we're really working with a lot of our clients in terms of how to make their data, clinical data, as emotional and hard-hitting as possible. So there's not a trade-off with being honest and being emotional in terms of the impact. So that's point number one. Your clinical data can be emotional. I think the other thing is we also work with clients whose data isn't as hard-hitting and it's a little bit more complicated. But I think one of the things that too often we see marketers try to do is they're trying to do too much in their brand advertising. They're trying to seal the deal when in fact, no one is actually getting a prescription based on a 60-second TV spot. And what they do, and what the job of brand advertising is to prime people before they enter the category so that when they do, they recognize your brand, they remember your brand, they're more likely to consider, research, and ask their doctor about your brand. And so it's about priming, it's about driving awareness, not about persuasion. And so you don't have to shove your campaigns full of RTBs. It's about linking your brand to the condition. Think about got COVID, Paxlovid. Or are you thinking about quitting cold turkey? Then what about quitting slow turkey?
Yeah, I love it.
These are all great examples of the have a break, have a Kit Kat strategy, where it's about when to think about your brand, not what to think about your brand. And I honestly have no idea what it is about Kit Kat that makes it so perfect for breaks. But by relentlessly focusing on that for honestly like 30 years, they've been really successful in getting people to think about their brand when they're in a buying situation or a using situation. And we've seen examples of pharma brands do that. It's about when to think about your brand, not what to think about your brand.
So John, I have a question here. Because one of the things I heard from, and like, for instance, that one team that's launching a brand next year, and they have a brand in a category, and there are 5 competing brands. So, and those brands are competing with a lot of marketing. So they have a big problem on their hands. If they can't go on TV and they can't really do a lot to differentiate because they don't have a lot of clinical data to differentiate, they're kind of in a jam there. And I do know one brand that kind of does it. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and Bob too, because Centix did, I think, very well with the Cyndi Lauper stuff, which is more emotional. And I believe that it would go through FDA even now. I mean, there's not anything there that would flag a letter, I don't believe. So that's an emotional, but also a clinical, it's a strategy-based campaign. What do you think about that? Or Bob, what did you think about Cosentyx?
Well, I love the Cosentyx campaign. It's been on for, 7 or 8 years. And I like that it does do a lot of things that I like, which is, getting a celebrity in there, but not being the star of the commercial. Just one of the folks, which I think is great. The blue collar guy that they have on there, who's been there for years too, is, representative of many of their user base. And I think they do a nice job of laying it out cleanly and being consistent in it. And I think they do a great job. It's one of I think the examples of, stay with what you got, it works. And you don't have to, as John says, you're not selling the whole deal. You're selling some emotion, and you're getting a lot of play on it for years now.
Can I build on that, Bob? Because I think it's an excellent point. It's such an effective campaign. And I think one of the things that it does right, which a lot of brands don't, is it's incredibly well branded. And I think too many pharma marketers, when they think of branding, they think of a logo in the bottom right-hand corner or a tagline at the end of their spot. And let's face it, no one is scanning every corner of the TV or their mobile phone, and no one's waiting for that tagline. But what they did with Cyndi Lauper was they made the celebrity the face of the brand. And someone could go to their doctor and say, I saw that Cyndi Lauper ad. Is that right for me? And we don't see enough campaigns that are really well branded. We actually did a study recently where we looked at the 50 biggest media brands in pharma, and less than 10% of them used really effective branding devices, the types of things, be it visual or audio, that show up early, prominently, and consistently in advertising. And that's why celebrities work so well, is that they can be omnipresent throughout every frame, and people walk away going, oh, I need to hear more about the Cyndi Lauper campaign. So I think a third strategy we're really recommending to our clients is invest in what we call distinct brand assets and move away from generic quality of life vignettes. Those are the things that get you into trouble. And right now, most pharma ads have 3 or more quality of life vignettes in them, which open you up to all kinds of regulatory challenge, versus something simple and on the nose, like a character, like a celebrity, like a jingle that makes no claims whatsoever, but is highly branded.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, John, based on the interviews as well. So in the interviews, what I heard, and from the letters, you can certainly see the FDA hates right now, and for good reason, quadruple scene cuts around the fair balance. I think we're all going to say, probably going forward, if we're getting smart, we can't really be doing that. I mean, we've kind of learned that, I think, from the letters. But the other thing that appears to be developing from that information, which I think is consistent with what you and I talked about and what seems to be coming out, is clear branding, single-mindedness of the claim. So don't try to ram in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 claims into an ad or a claim or a marketing piece. Brand, claim. There's a letter that came out through the 40, which was from Ingrezza. I believe I'm pronouncing it right.
Huh?
And they were slammed for two of their claims, which were around things that their clinical data did not completely support. But the one claim that they could own 100% is that they are the number one prescribed medication. Number one for that condition. That's a clear fact. And I would think that would be important to those patients, wouldn't you think?
I mean, McDonald's still has that billions and billions served over every arch. And again, I think to your point, it's about being really single-minded on what is the data point you can most clearly stand behind, and how do you communicate that in a really breakthrough way. I mean, Salesforce, they were trying to sell their CRM program, and for several years, again, no one buys a CRM program based on a banner ad. It was a simple line chart that showed they had 29% market share and growing, and all their leading competitors had 4% and flat. And again, it's a data point, but they were so head and shoulders above everyone else. It was a shocking data point. And so that's where I think you said it. We shove too much stuff in every spot, trying to make the sale versus we're not persuasion, we're driving priming.
Right. So why is that? Is that because drug companies are, they basically are looking at it as a detail piece for consumers where they want to present everything they've got? The agencies should know that. So, I guess that's my question of why is it happening that so many drug commercials are overselling? They put too much in it. It's too complicated. They don't get to the one core benefit that consumers really care about. Why do they do that?
I think it's a great point. I think one, the conventions of pharma advertising evolved 10, 15 years ago when we lived in a very different media landscape. We could take attention for granted. There was a few big blockbuster drugs. They really stood out with huge budgets. That doesn't exist anymore. Budgets are smaller. Media landscape is fragmented. Attention is divided. Second, I think one of the things that I feel very strongly about is we are now the number 2 advertising category in the US. Yet we still take our marketing lessons from consumer packaged goods. That is nuts. And one of the things we've been doing is really doing some kind of hard research on what works for pharma. We are a high involvement, high innovation category where people are frequently overwhelmed, but they want to get their choice right. We are not like the consumer packaged goods, low involvement, low innovation. I worked on Glad trash bags for many years. No offense to my old colleagues, but no one can remember what brand of trash bags are under the sink. And no one really cares. But people do care about their health. And I think we need to acknowledge that there's been a sea change in terms of how people characterize their health. When we started 15 years ago, it was really before social media, and health and illness was frequently a source of shame and stigma. So we rarely showed anything other than the perfect patient. Now I go onto social media. There's these amazing communities. It's all about authenticity. It's all about celebrating the struggle. And I think pharma marketers haven't caught up to where our audience is. And I think one of the things I say is, we should be treating our patients like Nike treats their athletes. These are amazing people. They put up with things that the rest of us, it would just overwhelm us, and they don't give up. And I think it's as much about celebrating their struggle, and we're there with them, versus promising them a Pollyannish view where all their problems will go away, because they know that's not the truth. And they talk about it every day. But if we can be a partner with them versus it's going to be okay, just take our drug, I think by being a little bit more authentic, a little bit more modest, we will build more trust with the American consumer.
So let me ask John, you make a couple good points. One, I think, is that commercials are over complex. And that was true before the FDA pronouncement about wanting to get rid of television and the letters that came out. So I guess the other thing is, what would you recommend now under the new regulatory umbrella that we've seen, or the shadow that we have? What do you think should change? Because the first thing you said was the complexity, but that was true before this whole thing started.
Mm-hmm.
I think commercials are complex, but now we're in an environment which is probably demanding what you say, less clinical discussion, and make sure it's true with no debate. It has to be real and true and provable. And the other thing, of course, is the whole fair balance issue, where a lot of companies were hit on distracting fair balance. And I'm wondering, what do you think is really going to change now in the creative output?
To your point, I think this, if you think about where we've been, I think honestly the FDA letters is adversity dressed up as opportunity. Opportunity dressed up as adversity. That we've been in a situation where we meet clients and they say, I've been spending tens of millions of dollars every year and I've got barely any brand awareness. And we've basically converged on a set of conventions where it's about showcasing quality of life vignettes versus being highly branded. So I think it's an opportunity to look at what we've been doing, really think about our patient, how invested they are in this journey, and think about how do we make our data. We've got an amazing, innovative environment. How do we make the data the hero of our story? How do we think less about what you need to think about your brand and more about when to think about your brand? And then finally, let's make sure that we're branded, because we're not going to be able to do all those things in the fair balance sequence that we used to. We've got a more limited window. Let's make sure at the very least, the one thing they take away from this advertisement is that there's a new brand out there. Because more than anything, we sell hope. We give people the optimism and the hope to go to their doctor and talk to them about a new treatment. And I think that's something that we should be proud of, and something that I think the need for isn't going away.
What percent of ads do you think are doing it well right now, of the 60 or 70 TV ads that are out there?
We really think, I think only 10%. I think if you do your branding well and really simplify your messaging, you will be in the top 10% of brands out there. And again, advertising is a competitive sport. That's kind of why I love it. You don't have to be the best ad in the world. You just have to be better than your competition. And if you get your simplicity of messaging down and your branding down, and there's lots of different ways to do that while being but not over promising, I think that's when your creative can actually maximize the impact of your media budget. Because ultimately, that's what creative is. It's about how do we make sure you get more bang for your media budget.
So, John, I've got to ask again the elephant in the room question here. So we were talking a little bit now about what makes a great ad, again, which we've talked about all year in this webinar series. But if we know now that two big companies are pulling most of their advertising entirely, what does that mean? I mean, companies pulling ads. I mean, we're not even talking about good ads and bad ads here. We're just talking all ads.
Well, if you
What's it going to mean? I mean, you're the optimist in the room. You're like, I want to see my clients going out there and beating the shit out of those. Sorry, keep beating the crap out of those people.
Frank,
what is it going to mean?
If you know, Frank, the brands that are going to be cutting their media budget, I would say, first of all, buy stock in their competitors.
Yeah, good luck for you, right?
But again, it is a challenging environment. We don't know what's going to happen to TV. We don't know what's going to happen to social media. We don't know what will happen to influencers. I think we have to go into next year with a very nimble approach. We can talk more about how AI, I think, is going to be able to help us in terms of video production here. But to unilaterally pull back on brand advertising strikes me as replacing regulatory risk with marketing failure certainty. So I don't think you should be taking your brand marketing budget off the table unilaterally. That's just a road to decreased volume.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. We're running a little low on time here. Caitlin, do we have any questions from the group?
We do have one question before I go ahead and announce that. I just want to let our audience know that on the right side menu, there is a list of icons. And if you hit the chat icon, you can submit your questions if you have any. Our first question is from Casey, and that is, how will this impact the emergence of direct-to-consumer brand platforms for direct sale, for example, Lilly Direct? And for those who aren't fully looped into the September announcement, what kind of specific requirements or guidance or expectations are there now?
So again, this is a kind of a fluid environment, but if anything, we're seeing the whole DTP environment really become more and more important. You see that with Trump RX. So there's a lot of government interest in that. I think what direct-to-patient channels allow us is to really kind of reduce the friction between driving disease ad awareness, driving brand awareness, and actually getting converted to you being with a doctor in a telehealth environment and getting online pharmacy fulfillment. So I actually think those DTP in particular, something we're very familiar with at Eversana, will only make all our marketing efforts more effective, regardless of whether it's branded or disease ed. You're always going to be, from now on, one click away from a telehealth conversation. And I think that's going to help all of us. I don't see the government moving against DTP. If anything, they're investing in it.
Yeah, I mean, they like the DTP because they know that will reduce price, which of course is the government's main goal right now, is to get prices down, and particularly for the drugs that are DTP drugs, like the weight loss, where they're looking for significant price reductions, and they're getting partial price reductions through the DTP. The other part of the question, I think, was on the September letters, and I guess what did we learn from that, Caitlin? What was
the second portion of the question was, for anyone that's not looped into the September letters, has the FDA put any specific requirements or what kind of guidance?
Well, there were two themes of the letters. One was a simple one, which is unfair balance, distracting visuals that took away from the fair balance itself and the risk section. Too many cuts. Themes in the visuals that have nothing to do with the drug, showing the happy scenes when they're talking about negative potential side effects. That was one. The other was on the what I would call the general impression area, which is if the FDA says you're overpromising, they can say it no matter what you say. They're basically looking at the gestalt of the ad, which is showing people cured essentially after taking the drug, and these vignettes, happy people, dancing people, people who probably can do more than the drug would do for them. I know one I just read recently on tardive dyskinesia, where they said that you're still going to have some tardive dyskinesia even after you take the drug. So showing people completely tick free and and not having any side effects from the drug is an overpromise. So the things like that, I think, are the two main themes that they're looking at. My impression was that the FDA can call any ad they want violative right now, and that's the danger, I think, as you construct ads that, they wrote 25 letters, I think, for branded television ads. When I watch a TV ad now, I could find any ad violative based on those criteria of distracting visuals, the supers being too small, over-promising. I mean, you really can find fault with almost every ad if you wanted to. And the FDA apparently wants to, so I don't think the letters are finished.
Well, and I would point out here, so two things here, Bob. I think not a lot of companies were surprised by those letters. I know the letter you're talking about, and to be honest, read that letter, I don't think that company was surprised. So most of this was pretty straightforward. The cuts that were being done for the side effects, we can't do that anymore. That's off the table. But what we'll have to do in order to get these submissions right is we have to have the agencies working closely on the label, working off the label. And that's why our company started this workshop, is we want to be an independent source. I'm not trying to sell it too much here, but independent source and not being such a hardcore, let's break the mold, let's create like some kind of creative breakthrough, wonderful advertisement. The example that you offered, John, of the Chantix, the chickens, excellent example. That would go through FDA because that's a really good claim with a really great creative. You can do that. You can do breakthrough advertising with good claims. You just don't have to do nutty stuff just for the sake of nutty stuff, right?
I can't agree more, Frank. It's about making your data the hero. It's about thinking about when to think about your brand versus what to think about your brand. Persuasion and trying to close the deal, they will occur in other channels. I think the other thing is, again, when the conventions of pharma advertising started, it was before we had this rich digital ecosystem that we have now. So I think we can think about what is the role of your brand campaign relative to other channels. And it's in the other channels that we're really seeing the sale close, where people are actually being persuaded.
Yeah.
Brand campaign is really just about priming them so that they'll recognize it, remember it, request some more information about it. So I think if you stay within those guardrails, you've got a far better chance of thriving in this new regulatory environment. But it is uncertain. I mean, as we were talking about before the show, they just fired the guy who signed all these letters. So nothing but uncertainty is coming down the line. But I do think it's an opportunity for pharma brand marketers to be a lot more focused and disciplined in what their brand campaigns.
Yeah, I think the uncertainty, and in my opinion, the uncertainty is still very, very high. The risk is still very, very high. I still think we'll be able to do television ads because the adequate provision requirement that's in there now that the FDA wants to get rid of is what allows you to have the 60-second ad. If they manage to really get rid of adequate provision, then you would have to basically, if you want to do TV, do a scroll of 3 minutes, which nobody's going to do. And the FDA knows that. And that's really why they're trying to do that. They want to try to make it impossible to do TV. But I think the courts will not allow that. I think adequate provision's been there since 1969. I think that there's a history of doing what's right for the consumer, and what's doing right for the consumer obviously is not scrolling 3 minutes of fair balance. So, but I do think the risk is high, and as we talked before the show, if Kennedy is there, I think the risk is higher. If Kennedy manages to annoy Trump to the point where he fires him or he leaves, I think the risk is much lower. I don't think the FDA really has an appetite to ban prescription drug advertising on television. I think this is all driven by Mr. Kennedy. And the degree of risk to me is based on whether he stays or goes, really, long term.
We have 3 more questions.
Go ahead.
The first one is, have we seen any new pharma TV spots launched since the September surprise? And are any of them, in your opinion, doing a good job of adapting to the FDA's new perspective?
Great question. I don't know. Certainly none have been produced or started to produce post. There's just too much of a time lag between shooting a spot. And so we're going to have to wait to see what those post-September campaigns look like, because there's just a bit of a lag. But I think there's a growing realization from a lot of clients that the conventional approach isn't working. I mean, let's face it, pharma ads are such a regular feature of SNL these days. I think we've kind of realized that they've become a bit of a cliche. And when you're wallpaper, you're not doing anything to help your brand stand out. So I think we're seeing more and more clients invest in strong branding, simplifying their message, staying closer to the data. I don't want to.
And so I'll say though also, John, because I'm not aware that maybe there might have been one that did launch while I wasn't aware. I try to keep touch, but I'm not aware of everyone. But there is a campaign that is launching at the end of the year, and they've already gone through all their processes on this. They did not stop on this, so it's submitted, and they will launch it in December. So they're not stopping.
We're not seeing a lot of clients.
They're not. I mean, so far.
I agree.
A number of clients that we spoke with at least weren't putting the brakes on. There were those 2 clients that were saying, we're not going forward. One of them did have a campaign in the can, and they're just going to wait and see what happens next.
I think
the bigger answer, I guess, Caitlin, to the question is, I think it's most clients will continue until they really get worse news from Washington. Does that make sense?
And I don't see anybody stopping advertising regulatory-wise until adequate provisions eliminated. I mean, basically, you'll be nuancing it if you get a letter, but there's no reason to stop.
Well,
adequate provision will not be rescinded probably for years.
But those two plants are stopping.
So they may be stopping, but I'm saying there's no regulatory reason to stop.
Oh, there is. You're right. They
may stop because they're either negotiating price and they don't want to piss off the FDA or Trump. So I can understand. I certainly understand reasons why drug companies would stop advertising if they felt that it would get them a better price deal or something like that, or approval of the drug faster. There's certainly the pressure from HHS not to advertise, and they're going to have to balance that positive negative feeling of whether it makes sense for them to stop and show the government they're agreeing not to advertise. That's a business decision, but there's no regulatory reason not to advertise.
Correct.
And we would concur, Frank. We're not seeing the vast majority of clients are going ahead. They're hedging their bets. They're looking at other channels that they could explore because one has to be nimble. Yeah. But given the regulatory environment that hasn't changed, the court case history hasn't changed, there is a risk that once you pull back, the only people that's going to benefit is your competitors.
Yeah, my advice to people doing advertising now is don't do the obvious things that are going to get you a letter. Yeah. To me, that's pretty basic. Fair balance is not exactly the part that you really have to worry about being creative and how many cuts you have and scenes. I mean, maybe that's the creative director wants to make it beautiful throughout the whole 60 seconds, but frankly, the 30 seconds can be straight recitation of the fair balance. I don't think you'll lose anything from your advertising effect if you just did that. So why risk a letter by trying to have photography look beautiful during the fair balance? It doesn't make sense to me, that you would risk a letter for that at this stage. So that's the change I would make if I were a pharma company now doing advertising. I would just look at my fair balance and make it as clean as possible with as few cuts as possible.
I think that's spot on.
Okay.
And I think that's what's happening, Bob. I think that's what I was hearing too. Spot on.
Our next question is, which channels do you think are best for driving the actual close or conversion?
Oh, I mean, we could have a whole webinar just on that. But I think, again, we're very bullish on DTP, the fact that we can convert people. Obviously, I think AI search is playing more and more of roles, kind of supplanting traditional search. But actually, we're seeing a lot of a growing impact of influencers in driving healthcare decisions, in terms of driving conversion and driving brand consideration. So we're seeing a lot of excitement around influencers in particular. The goal, and that's what we keep on stressing, the goal of your brand campaign is very simple and very focused. It's about priming so they remember your brand when they encounter it, when they actually enter the category. That's the job of your brand.
Perfect. Anything else, Caitlin? Any other questions?
There is one.
Okay.
There are two more.
Okay, go ahead. Let's get them in.
Okay, perfect. The next one is, what do you all think about the ads that received letters from the FDA but are still currently on air?
I think most of them are on air still, and I think they're responding, and it's a process, and they'll say we disagree with you, and they'll keep running it until they get the final. We heard what you said, and we don't agree with you. So I don't think companies should run away from it. I really don't. I mean, basically, there's entitled letters or requests. Eventually, they could become demands. But right now, they're saying if you have any data that says why we're wrong, send it to us. And they do that, and they'll go through the process. And eventually, they'll have to change it. But I don't think there's any risk in having a dialogue with FDA while you're still running your ad.
Our last question is, can you repeat the statistic you mentioned about the number of people who went to see their HCP after seeing an influencer ad?
I do not have data on that. What I have seen is, and I'll share it in the chat, I can't recall, it was an econometric data on the role of influencers, both in terms of brand building and driving conversion. So happy to share that in the show link after the fact.
Yeah, and I could share something to the same effect, John. There is data on that. One data point that is kind of similar in terms of driving patients in to see a doctor. Hardcore data point is 20% roughly of patients coming in to see a doctor for the first time about the condition have been driven into the doctor's office by DTC marketing. So if anybody out there thinks we shouldn't be doing DTC marketing, it's clear to your point, John. We are fooling. DTC marketing is a huge part of what is helping the industry.
And to that point, Frank, one of the best pieces of research was by Brad Shapiro, a professor at University of Chicago, Booth School, where he said one of the biggest impacts pharma ads have is in driving people to talk to their doctor. In many ways, more than anything, we sell hope. We get people who are suffering from conditions to think, there's a reason for me to talk to my doctor about something else. And I think that's an amazing business to be in.
Okay, I think we're running a little bit over, but that's okay. We got all the questions in. To just wrap up, I think that Frank mentioned our workshop program that we have. Any pharmaceutical company or agency that's interested in talking to us about it, we'll talk about looking at your ads and trying to figure out what we think you can do differently or better, or preparing for this new environment. We're happy to do that for you, and give me a call or write me at bob@dtcperspectives.com, and we can arrange something to have a preliminary meeting just to see if we can help you or not. We'll be continuing to follow this obviously very, very closely over the next few months until we get some resolution. We know that it's a major concern of our pharmaceutical clients and customers. We'll be dealing with this at the DTC National, obviously, again, next April. But between now and April, we'll be having more webinars, and anything that we find out or any expertise we get, we'll share with you. So we appreciate you attending today. We're kind of an objective resource, so feel free to contact us, Frank or John at Eversana, and we'll be happy to help you in more detail. So we'll see you again next month, and we'll have another issue. Frank, do you have any wrap up?
No, I thought it was a good discussion. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bob.
John, and thank our audience. And we'll be staying with you throughout this whole process.
Thanks,
so
everybody.
See you next time. Take care.